Welcome to the 2X e-commerce podcast show. I'm Kunle, your host, and this is the podcast we talk about growth, and we're living in interesting times now, and this is a very special episode. If you noticed last week, I didn't really want to push out an episode, and I just wanted to see how events were going to unfold. On today's episode, I have with me specific experts in e-commerce, and we're going and subsequently, throughout this week, I'm going to get a few other experts coming in on the show. Some of them would give us a perspective from the Chinese, what the Chinese have viewed. People are very connected to China. But today, I want to get an understanding of business impact. So if you're selling on Amazon, if you're running a full-fledged e-commerce operation, selling direct to consumer, what should you... Let me get the mic here. What should you really brace yourself up for it over the next couple of weeks? So today I'm joined by Artur. Artur is create apps and software for e-commerce from an AI perspective. Andrew has been on the show. They run his family runs a huge Amazon business, one of the biggest in the HVAC space on Amazon. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of SKUs, if I'm not mistaken. And then John's an attorney. I attended one of his webinars, and who was talking about the business preparation for in the midst of COVID. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome all you three to this panel.
You're happy to be here.
Okay, fantastic.
Thanks for having us.
Fantastic. Could you guys take a few seconds to introduce yourselves? I'm just going to start out with Artur, please.
Yep. So I'm a co-founder of Colab, Los Angeles-based venture studio that helps startups and businesses build technology using the benefits of AI and machine learning.
Okay, interesting. Andrew?
My name is Artur Tjernlund. I'm with Tjernlund Products. We're the largest supplier to Amazon directly in the industrial space.
Fantastic. And then John?
Yes, I'm a shareholder with the law firm Baker Donelson. I chair our global business team, and I focus my practice primarily in Asia with a focus on China, and then also Europe, working with companies doing business either from or to those regions. And I also serve as the British honorary consul here in the United States.
Super interesting. Thank you guys for making it. It was quite short notice, and you all made it to this episode. So where do we start from? What should we brace ourselves up for? We're in kind of like the same basket in the UK and US. We're probably a week behind you guys. So what should businesses be doing now? Who should I start out with? Let's start out with John, please.
Yeah, sure. If you haven't already have a plan, a contingency plan for businesses, a business disruption like this virus is going to force, then you need to get one right now, because once the virus causes businesses to have to shut or reduce operations, it's kind of too late to plan at that moment. You need to be executing the plan. So my first recommendation is to plan as best you can, because it will be a significant disruption.
Okay, interesting. On your thoughts, Andrew?
We're in a little bit of a challenging situation because the main thing that we provide Amazon is pick, pack, and shipping. I mean, we run a warehouse, so unlike traditional e-commerce companies that you can work from remotely very easily, really our strength is our handling of product. I mean, we have 40 employees. All they do is, manufacturing, assembly, and, and shipping. And so we do have things in place for other difficult situations. In Minnesota, where I'm at, in the northern part of the country, it's usually related to like snow emergencies and things like that. So what we're doing is we're kind of taking it day by day and relying on the experts to figure out, how to handle this situation.
Is your warehouse running in full capacity right now?
Yes, it is.
Oh, wow.
I would say the main thing that we're keeping in mind is we have 50 employees, we have a 100,000 square foot facility. It's quite a bit less dense than even most people's homes.
Yeah.
So we're a little bit different than a bar and a restaurant, and we have very, very little interaction. In fact, the closest thing we have interaction is delivery drivers, and I found out that FedEx doesn't require signatures. In fact, the driver is supposed to put CV19 as the signature to show that, that the driver is not getting a signature because of the coronavirus. So there are our partners and things like that we're taking steps to, I guess, disinfect people before they come into our facility. But for the most part, we're taking it day by day. And as I speak right now, we are running with normal capacity.
Wow. And would you say this is a situation across other warehouses? Are you, do you have that extra, is this a special case having 100,000 square foot, warehouse? What about smaller warehouses? Do you think, they're going to have an issue?
Well, everything that I hear so far is really related to exposure and density. So they are, in my area, encouraging bars and restaurants where we have a lot more people coming in and coming out and a lot more density per square foot to avoid that. I mean, it's hard to be at a bar or restaurant where people are not arm's length away. But where we're at, we have individual offices for everybody in the office, so they can close their door, and they probably have 200 square feet that is just for their space. And in the factory, most people are not interacting with each other in any major way. And so I guess my personal view at this point is that compared to people in their day-to-day existence, they're not in any more contact than they normally would be if they weren't working. But what we're running into is the difficulty of work from home. No one can run our presses or some of our, box making machines from their living room. It's just not an option. And so we will either have to shut down virtually completely or continue to operate as normal. And so what we will have some very, very difficult and significant decisions because there's no half measures in our business.
So it'd be two extremes, really. Okay. Artur, what brought, what really caught my attention was a statement you made. You said, we have a vast portfolio of e-commerce businesses and early stage startups that are experiencing major issues right now, major issues right now. We're preparing them for the next shift. So what is this next shift?
Yeah, so obviously when we're talking about the global impact, there will be a number of second and third order consequences that businesses are not really thinking about right now. And as with, us going to the gym and spending our time and feeling the pain, there comes the second order effect of us getting fit. And the same thing applies here. And in terms of all the supply chain disruptions and just the effects of social distancing, these things may bring the long-term results that we are not really talking about. Just from the consumer behavior, consumer demand, and how people buy stuff and how they expect the stuff to be delivered to them or packaged for them, or how they experience customer support or things like that.
Interesting. So is that going to be for positive or negative? How do you see things panning out, and what kind of timelines are we looking at from social distancing and all of the changes that we're to expect?
Yeah. So people have to understand that there's going to be negative effect for sure, but there's going to be a lot of positive effect too. And the same way the social distancing is going to have long-term negative effects on retail and purchasing behavior, there will be some positive effect and positive opportunities when it comes to simply adjusting to a lot of people being bored at home. And, it's only that much that Netflix can supply us with in terms of the next 2 weeks. And there's going to be an immediate rush to have new type of experiences, have new type of, items being delivered, and just trying out new things while being at home.
Interesting. Okay, let's go back to
Can I add something? Can I add something to that? Because
yes,
I agree with that. I agree with that, but I think, though, that's going to be a short term. My concern is, unlike, say, for example, in China, where you had some implicit export restrictions because the government was buying everything up, and or the inability to ship things out, so things were in China, because that's where most of these things are made. They were able to supply that demand, and then also the government was providing significant support. I don't think we're going to see some of that support in our countries here. And so I believe, or I'm concerned, as this virus takes hold and more employees are sent home, laid off, businesses close, that they're not going to then have, you're going to see this surge in consumer demand, but then you're going to see a drop because people are going to be more concerned with, saving their cash, unless our government intervene. At least, that's what we're kind of modeling out a little bit, and that's some of the advice we're giving to our clients, is to really start looking at this long term, and what will they do in the event that there is this decrease in demand.
There's a word on people's bailout. So back in 2008, there was the banks bailout, but the thing was, like, there were like 5 major players, and there were lots of smaller consolidations. Banks like Lehman Brothers shut down, and there was that impact of giving them the funds. But now we're talking about so many industries: the airline industry, retail. There is no fix. What are your thoughts? What impact? How far does the government actually help? The retail, all industries, not just retail. Businesses are going to shut down from what I'm seeing. But Andrew, is there still continuous demand coming through from Amazon and other channels you guys are active at?
Yeah, so it's interesting. For the last several weeks until this week, until literally yesterday, our demand was probably higher than normal. We sell needs, not wants. And so, one thing that we've been particularly selling a lot of is we sell a lot of furnace filters, air filters, things like that. And so there's a lot of products that people still need. We sell a lot of them on a daily basis anyway, but people are particularly conscious of that right now because we don't sell very many, how would I say it, discretionary consumer products. We haven't been hit dramatically at all. I do know that officially as of yesterday, though, across the board, Amazon has both either stopped purchase orders or limited purchase orders because they are trying to allow maximum capacity for medical supplies and health and wellness products. Basically, they've run out of paper towels and related products, and they have that coming in, and they don't want their receivers and other warehouse staff being bogged down shipping out, spatulas and stuffed animals when they should be receiving and shipping out these things. So until April 5th, they will be holding back orders for non-critical products and using their warehouse staff to do that. So that coincides with the big increase in hiring that you mentioned a little bit earlier. They're both trying to increase overall capacity. And while they're working on hiring all those people, they are going to minimize availability of other products. So the one big effect you will see, specifically through Amazon, and they're such a big part of it, at least in the US, but all across the world of the e-commerce space, is you will see less and less availability of non-critical stuff as Amazon focuses on critical stuff. And so you may run into a situation where the T-shirt that you wanted to buy or the other somewhat non-critical discretionary thing is a little bit less available than it otherwise would be.
And I guess it's also part of demand forecasting. No one's thinking about buying nice suits now, or a T-shirt, as you said, and they need to fill their warehouses with what people need, not just from a business standpoint, but to do what is right now, which is the medical essentials. And filling it up with non-discretionary stuff would just not make any sense. And I suppose they might also be increasing their warehouse capacity. Who knows? But super interesting point about the purchase orders, just to limit, that flow.
Well, yeah, they're basically, so, I mean, they are taking explicit steps that are outside of what the algorithm would tell them, because the algorithm just is not built
Overriding
for
it.
this sort of incident, right? But other than that, I do know that at least with our sales, for better or for worse, they have been relatively stable. I do think this is a situation where, for items that are somewhat discretionary, but not, say, a replacement pack of light bulbs or something like that, you don't need them in an immediate sense, but in the same way, they are relatively essential, at least compared to, a can of sardines or something like that that may be discretionary. So for a lot of the stuff, if you're in a space where it's somewhat of a relatively standard good, I think that we won't see the same kind of decrease that you're seeing in more say upscale and discretionary products like luggage or something along those lines.
Super interesting. Let's talk about operations. Artur, you raised a point about payroll, and expenses. What should we start to? What changes should we brace ourselves up to for now? And looking out as far out as mid-April, there'll be a lot of lockdowns. As Andrew alluded to, it's going to be an either-or situation. How should we, what lays ahead, and how do we manage employees and still be human, here?
Yeah. So obviously, most of the businesses are entering into the cash preservation stage. The most effective strategy is obviously try to defer as much payments as you can. And, when it comes to the lease or working with vendors, everyone is in a tough position right now, but, you're kind of taking the optimization risk here, because at the end of it, 2 months from now, if things get worse, everyone will be doing the same strategy. So it only benefits you to be rational, only if everyone is rational. And unfortunately, there will be a limit to that type of behavior. So limiting spending, preserving cash, and the most important thing is focusing on how to actually reinvent your business. And if you're losing more than 50% of your revenues right now, which is really the case with the majority of e-commerce companies that are not selling essential items, then you're really definitely going to keep losing that money for the next couple of months, no matter what happens, just due to the nature of how all of these effects propagate. And we're talking about bankruptcies of your vendors. We're talking about the potentially laid off employees. We're talking about the communication delays. We're talking about the long-term logistics effects and other things that definitely affect every single player across the supply chain. So we need to evaluate the entire business process, and we need to identify the weakest points of those and optimize for those as soon as possible.
Yeah, the wise words, really just be very cautious. Thank you so much. That's a really good point. John, do you have any points? What are your clients, what are you advising your clients? How do we brace ourselves up, managing expenses and payroll from your
I mean, it is, yes, it is really difficult. And that's, unfortunately, some of the conversations we're having already is, hoping for the best, but then planning for the worst. And what I mean by that is it's looking at the business and I agree, it's identifying those weak points in the continuum from, supply all the way through to the customer, and then trying to help shore those up, because if in fact we can't do it, then in some of my cases, we're already talking about layoffs, simply because the business is trying to preserve itself. So there is something to go back to when all of this resolves itself. And those aren't easy. Those are not easy conversations to have, but it is kind of where we find ourselves. And this is worse than, say, I think with the financial crisis in 2008, and then even in 2003 with the SARS epidemic, simply because there's like no place to go. Because it is affecting everybody, pretty drastically. So what we are also pushing, we work in public policy as well, and we're working, at least in Washington, trying to promote more intervention to provide relief to businesses, typically with paid leave, and seeing if we can get that extended as much as possible, because I think that will provide some support to businesses, and then other relief that can be provided to businesses that will allow them to preserve cash at the same time. Because otherwise, like I said, a lot of these are smaller. We represent a lot of small startups in this space, and there's only just so much they can absorb. And in some cases, the disruption caused by the U.S.-China trade war was already a hit to them, and now this is kind of doubling down. So it's going to be a difficult situation, but we are trying to help them, find alternative sources of supply. We're trying to help them, manage the employment side risk with, anything we can do. We're trying. Unfortunately, we don't think there's going to be insurance for many of these disruptions, and so I think that's going to add, to this burden as well.
There has to be a massive, government bailouts, or a lot of businesses are going to have to go under. Okay, let's talk about the empathetic side. I was having a conversation with a retailer yesterday, and he was like, Kunle, what can we do here? What can we do here? And I was like, look, if you have access to like hand sanitizers, for instance, you could reach out to reach out to the database and say, okay, every order today, is going to come with 3 hand sanitizers or something like that. Should we be human now? How empathetic should we be? Some of us are going to have to shut down our businesses, at some point, just suspend operations and see how these things flow. But right now, how can we, show that we care, to our clients? Do you guys have any case studies? Are you seeing any, any businesses, doing things slightly different now rather than panic, extending empathy, really?
Yeah, absolutely. And I can add to that. And, in the current climate, for some of the businesses, the most effective strategy would be just shutting down and trying to optimize for the worst type of incident. And in terms of, even in terms of payroll and expenses, the most responsible thing is to be upfront with all the partners that you have and be very explicit about the realities. And obviously, this is kind of the thing that we don't typically talk about in the positive climate of the business, but this is the time to be human about that aspect and be very upfront, very realistic, and talking with your partners on the same level of, radical transparency.
I didn't even think about the employee bits, but they're the most important, really, because happy employees would lead to happy customers. Very, very, very good point. Does anybody want to chime in on openness? On how to be open? I know there's a lot going on. There's a lot of panic going on. But does anybody want to give some more tips on that?
Well, and this is John. So one of the things, again, we're also advising our clients is to communicate. I mean, not only to their suppliers, but also with their customers and the employees. I mean, that's one of the things we strongly recommend to all of our clients, is that you open clear communication channels with your employees, both when they're at the facility and if you have to start working remotely, and providing them with up-to-date information on, the outbreak, what they can do, what benefits or services may be available. We, even at our law firm, we've got all sorts of, because we're lawyers, we have all sorts of mental health benefits, but we've made sure that those are available to employees, so if they have anxiety or worry over this issue, there's someone they can reach out to talk to them, but also just what can they do in their homes, what can they do at the workplace to stay safe. And then with our clients and their customers and suppliers. It's literally reaching out, and helping and offering to help where you can. What is going on in your area or your situation, and how can we all work together to make this work? Because it really is going to take all of us working together to be as successful as we can be. Unfortunately, I think sometimes we have contracts and we want to hold people to contracts. I just don't think this is one of those times where we should be focusing on just what my contract says. Let's focus on actually being helpful and flexible and kind, because I think that will help us. I'm not saying it's going to solve all of our problems, obviously, but I think it will help us find solutions that can then work for everybody, and we can get these win-win-win kind of situations.
I'm hoping that empathy would, not only be top-down organizationally, but also from a policy level, from the government down to businesses and its citizens eventually. So I'm going to wrap up with the final question, which I'd like everybody to answer, and it is really, what are your remote working, what's your remote working strategy? How do you intend to at least keep the frame of your business riding through this, this crisis essentially, with remote? What does your remote, working strategy look like? I'll start out with Arthur, please.
Yeah, and actually we're quite fortunate that this thing is happening in 2020, not 10 years ago, just because right now we have the perfect infrastructure to support the nature of remote work. We have Slack, Trello, Asana, all kinds of tools. We have Zoom that we're talking through right now.
Exactly.
And it's kind of good that we're prepared for it, except we're trying to also experience the things that we've never experienced. And I believe there is a massive opportunity here to kind of show businesses like Zoom, Slack, and others, and communicate to them, hey, we're struggling because, and this is exactly what we're missing. And as we approach different new businesses that are entering the nature of remote work, there is a lot of opportunity to both learn as a business how to use these tools efficiently, and also communicate about your needs too.
Yeah, absolutely. And Slack's apparently Slack's the user experience in Slack is a bit slack right now, pardon the pun, but I hear, because they've never experienced this volume of users at this point in time. But I hear their engineers are working on optimizing the platform. And
exactly, because it was mostly tech tool. And
yeah,
now it's being used for no tech type of use cases.
Exactly. It's fascinating, and it's starting to reveal organizations that were holding back on their remote working strategy. There's some who have I'm not going to mention names. They've had to purchase laptops in hundreds, and some of them have had to increase the capacity for VPNs. It's incredible what's going on out there. Andrew, I know it's an either or in your situation, but do you have any remote working plans or infrastructure in place to keep the business going, say going forward over the next few weeks?
Sure. Well, it's interesting, your previous question about the empathy and the remote working in our situation kind of play one into the other, in the same way that there needs to be empathy for a lot of people that are able to work from home, for say the garbage men of the world that still have to go and pick up your garbage, otherwise new situations happen. And where I live, it's still below freezing, and so the heating products that we provide are still, it's important that someone is out there to ship them, because otherwise we create new situations. So to the extent that we're able to do a call like this you're talking about, there are people who are working to maintain that grid system or maintain those services. So it's important that people remember that in some situations, it's very easy to shut down and work from home. If you have a certain business, if you have a different kind of business, it's critical so that everybody else can shut down and work from home for you to maintain what you're already doing. So our work from home, we're looking at that, and we probably will minimize the amount of actual attendance that needs to be at our facility. The fact of the matter is, realistically, if we shut down, we will likely have to continue paying employees for no productivity, and that will come out of our end. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. We'll still get fined by Amazon for not hitting ship dates. That's the reality and the risk that we're facing. What we're really trying to do right now is once the situation, if it does become a case where it truly would be irresponsible for us to continue operating, the reason that we want to operate as we are right now is so that we can, when that situation potentially presents itself, that we can be shut down as long as reasonably possible and not run into layoffs and things like that. In fact, we're interviewing 5 more people in the same vein as Amazon today for pick, pack, and shipping jobs. So at the same time that we need the most productivity, we could run into this very, very tricky situation. So I think just an overall understanding of all the background helps people know that, hey, as much as all people want to contribute to avoid any kind of spread, there are certain requirements in order for people to be able to do these kind of things. So we're like I said, we're taking it day by day, and we're actually having a discussion later today to figure out a more specific plan, especially for the rest of our workforce. And just the tricky part is for those that can work from home, there are a lot of people that realistically can't work from home, and we need to keep in mind that we need to take care of those people as well.
Absolutely. So you keep the engine going for as much as you can to keep those reserves, so you can keep your staff, for as long as this holds through.
Right. If we're gonna have to shut down for a month, or 2 weeks, which we can do. I want to do that when in the most critical month, and not at this point. Like I said,
timing.
It's where we're at specifically in our geographic location. I think. It will probably, unfortunately, get worse before it gets better. And so we want to make sure that, when that's critical or mandated by law for us to do such things, that we're in as good a position to be able to do that as well as we can.
At what stages are things like in where you
Minnesota?
Yep.
Minnesota. So we're in Minneapolis area. The city of Minneapolis has certain rules. We're outside of the city of Minneapolis, technically. So I guess we're a suburb, and so we don't have any hard restrictions. They're shutting down things like schools and encouraging bars and restaurants. But as far as factories and other, I don't know of very many places that are doing work from home that couldn't do that on an ongoing basis anyway, or don't have a policy in place already, because it's a person in front of their laptop 8 hours a day anyway. As far as actual places that have equipment that needs to be operating, things like that, I haven't heard of anybody shutting down in our immediate area.
Interesting, thank you, John. Do you want to wrap things up? What's your remote working plan? Your company.
Yeah, so, as a law firm, it's a little easier for us because the lawyers, for example, can do work from pretty much anywhere. We went to the cloud, many years ago, and so I work all over the world seamlessly. We have all sorts of technology that allows us, to do that. So for us, it was fairly easy. They said, you're going to work remotely. I just picked up my stuff and came home. I just brought my docking station here so I can, it's just easier for me to use my multiple screens. Now, the interesting part, though, is for our support staff. So typically our support staff, they all work in office, right? That's just the nature of their work. But again, we had a plan, and so we issued laptops that we have in reserve to all of those staff, and then set up networks to allow them to continue to communicate. So my assistant is actually working at her house, but we are in constant communication with each other, and she is supporting my work, but from her apartment. And so I think that's been really beneficial in that they had this plan in place. We have a big disaster, more natural disasters than anything else, but practice. And so I think some of that bled into our own planning, and it's been really helpful for us because, like I said, the word came out fairly quickly, and that plan was put into place. And as far as I can tell, my workflow has not been impacted at all. And that's at the kind of the macro level of the firm. And then with my group in particular, I'm holding periodic conference calls, and then I'll do video calls with select groups of folks to see how they're doing, make sure that we're, supporting each other and making sure everyone gets the resources, that they need.
Well, fascinating. What I gathered is Andrew's company, which is, an internet, company, it's e-commerce essentially, is heavily physically, dependent. And whereas you're in the legal part, where it's intellectual, and you can make that transition much quicker. They can't even make the transition, which is super interesting. Anyway, I'm going to wrap this. I just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you, Arthur, Andrew, John, for turning up in such short notice. I appreciate it. Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for having us, everyone.
Cheers. Best of luck.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, good luck, everyone.